Watch, a comprehensive build-up to December 4th.
We will be looking at elections history in the Gambia, the electoral process, as well as the campaign period. Election Watch will bring you fascinating segments, the main highlights on social media, the electorate segment, which will be about you and what you expect from your elected leaders.
Join me, Fatmata Sise and Issa So, every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. on Election Watch as we bring you a detailed outlook of the journey to December polls.
Don't miss this important discourse on our elections, only on GRTS.
Good evening, wherever you may be watching us from. This is the Gambia Radio and Television Services, and it's a warm welcome to yet another edition of Election Watch with me, Fatmata Sise and Essa. So, good evening, Essa.
Yes, good evening, Fatmata. It's a pleasure being back again.
Of the Election Watch.
Very well, very well.
Well, tonight we will be discussing pertinent matters regarding the electoral process here in the Gambia. And tonight we will be looking at the role of advertisements and social media in elections, and also how to counter disinformation. And our experts tonight will be communications expert Demba Kende and, of course, media chief Fatou Camara Essa.
Also coming up on the program, we will be speaking to our pool of correspondents who are out and about covering the respective candidates. The campaign trail is heating up, and we'll bring you an exclusive coverage of the campaign trail as we zero in on December the 4th.
We're also keeping a close eye on social media. That's to discuss making headlines there. Aminata E. Sanyang will be joining us live on Election Watch to bring us up to speed on what Gambians within and outside the country are saying on social media about this elections. And we'll be getting you feeds from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. For now, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, Election Watch continues right here on GRTS. Still stay tuned.
Welcome back to Election Watch here on GRTS with me, Essa Sow and Fatoumata Sise. This is a special build-up to the December 4th presidential elections. And tonight, we will begin with the respective correspondents. They are out and about covering the campaign trail. We have Usman Mane, who is with the National Unity Party. And on the other line, we have Ibrahim Jallow, who is covering the only independent candidate in the race, Essa Mbaifal. So the two gentlemen will bring us up to date with the latest developments happening across the country as far as those two candidates are concerned. We are zeroing in on December 4th, and the gentlemen are already on the line. We'll begin with Ibrahim. Ibrahim, good evening and a warm welcome to Election Watch. All right, we're supposed to have Ibrahim Jallow, who is with Team Turnaround, Essa Mbaifal. And on the other line, we have Usman Mane. Usman is with the National Unity Party. Our correspondents have been giving us exclusive coverage of the campaign trail as we zero in on December the 4th. Let's see whether we have them back on the line. Good evening, gentlemen, and a warm welcome to Election Watch.
Good evening, Team Election Watch.
All right, sounds like we have Ibrahim Jallow on the line. Ibrahim, tell us where exactly is Essa Mbaifal and his Team Turnaround right now?
Well, the latest for the Team Turnaround is that it has been a whole day and night engagement yesterday. the fact that the team left the provincial Gambia back to base, with a massive welcome ceremony that was staged in the Combos, going down towards the metropolis and finally climaxing at Senegambia and to the home to the compound of the two team leaders, Samai Fall, which is Kersering. The team had brief stops on the way coming from Frakenge via Foni, that is the Trans-Gambia Highway. And at around 6 p.m., the entourage entered Kembuje, which is on the outskirts of Britama, the administrative town of Esposa region. But from there, we had a very massive welcome by supporters of the team, and that has plunged the convoy into a very low-key affair as far as the drive is concerned. The team was just struggling to penetrate the crowd coming down towards the Serekunda, that is KM. So the welcome ceremony started happening there, and then the fanfare was just, colorful.
All right.
People have been chanting and then in support of the party leader.
All right.
So the convoy drove from there down towards Serekunda, and we almost drove more than 8 hours to get to where we're supposed to stop.
All right, so team turnaround led by Esam Baifal is back to base, like you said. Ibrahima, I'm sure they will be hitting the campaign trail once again to, finish the job. Talk to us about some of the messages that Esa and his team have been sharing with the electorate ahead of December 4th.
Well, the team leader, Esam Baifal, has been communicating a very contentious manifesto that has been designed to cater for the development needs of the country, factoring all the major economic components or sectors of the country. These include health, agriculture, education, and trade, as well as employment for the youth and women. So he was having a face-to-face meeting with people in rural communities, including those in the Upper River region, the CRR, and the Lower River region, and also to hear from them, as far as their development needs are concerned. So the team leader said, he had all those challenges that they've been manifesting or highlighting, contained in his development manifesto, and he just urging them to rally behind him and translate those love and votes support for him into votes in December 4th, and then so that he's going to apply all those plans that he has for the country.
Ibrahima Jallow, stay on the line. In the meantime, Ibrahima Jallow is with Team Turnaround, led by the only independent candidate in the race, Esam Baifal.
And then Usman Mane is on the line. He is accompanying the National Unity Party, led by Ibrahima Jallow. Good evening, Usman, and welcome to Election Watch.
It's a pleasure, Father and Esa.
All right, it's good to have you on the program. Now, tell us where the National Unity Party is currently at.
Currently, we are in Kiang Kulikunda, where the meeting with the community has just begun. But before that, earlier, we had a rally in Bodoyel in Jara East, then proceeded to Jalambere, equally in Jara East, and now in Kiang Kulikunda.
All right, quickly, Usman, tell us what the leader of the National Unity Party has been sharing with the electorate there.
Yes, key among them is to improve agricultural development through mechanization and providing irrigational facilities across the country, more especially in the Central River region and also in Upper River region. And also in terms of youth and women empowerment, the National Unity Party, through their manifesto, has programs to provide technical and vocational education training by building skill centers, multiple centers across the country at regional administrative areas. And this, they believe, will help provide the needed human resource base that the country needs to intensify the country's development trajectory. And for women empowerment, they believe that by empowering women through their small farmer holder initiatives in horticulture, gardening, food processing, those are some of the cardinal pillars they believe can improve the livelihoods of women as well as provide economic independence for them. For the security sector reform, they are committed to, to remove or decouple the Gambia Police Force and the Gambia Immigration Department to stand as an autonomous body to, deliver effective and efficient services to the Gambian population, as well as, empower them because he did lament the current state of the security forces in the country because they feel they are demoralized due to the presence of the economic forces. Because some of the communities we visited in Wuli, borderland communities, they did raise concern over banditry around their area. Thieves will come from their end to steal their cattle and thieves. So basically, those are some of the responses from the party leader, Abdullah Ibrahim Jammeh.
All right. Usman, we'll leave it there. Many thanks for your time on the election, which we appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
All right, that was our correspondents, Ibrahim Jallo and Usman Mane. Usman is with the NUP, and Ibrahim Jallo is with the independent presidential candidate, the only one for that matter.
Very well.
But we also have our senior correspondents out there. Mamadou Jallo and Mama J are with the NPP. Yuri Jallo is with the PDIS. Louis Mendy is with GDC. Babu Cham is with the UDP. But for now, we'll take a quick break, Esa. When we come back, the election watch continues right here. We have our topic of discussion, the role of social media and advertisements in elections and countering disinformation. Our expert here tonight is going to be Demba Kande and Fatu Kamara. Do stay with us.
Welcome back to Election Watch here on GRTS with me, SSO and Fatoumata Sise. Up next, we'll be moving on to our topic of discussion. Tonight, we'll be looking at the role of advertisement and social media in elections, and as well countering disinformation during polls. And our expert this evening is Mr. Demba Kande. He's a social media expert and a lecturer at the University of the Gambia, School of Journalism and Digital Media. Mr. Kande, good evening and a warm welcome to Election Watch.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so the free flow of information is quite important as far as elections are concerned, especially in other parts of the world. To begin with, talk to us about when did politicians and elections in general began to witness the use of social media in election campaign?
Thank you very much. Generally, social media has become very, very important since some people connect this to the Obama election in 2008, as far back as then. And then if you come closer to home in Sub-Saharan Africa, in Nigeria in 2015, it was very, very essential. In Kenya in 2017, and then you go to Senegal in their most recent election, and then of course the Gambia in 2016. Social media played such an important role. So generally speaking, over the years, from 2015 to date in Sub-Saharan Africa and in this sub-region, social media has become a very, very important component of politics.
All right, let's dive deeper into this topic and look at the trajectory of using social media as a campaign tool. I mean, how dominant is conveying ads on social media compared to the use of the traditional media, which is the radios, the televisions, and as well as the newspapers?
Our research shows that increasingly a lot more advertisers, including political advertisements, are moving from the mainstream media, especially from print. A lot more are not doing print, especially on newspapers and magazines. They're focusing more on online ads, what we call search engine advertisements, as well as social media advertisements, as well as web-based campaigns and so on and so forth. So a lot of it is moving to the online platforms now.
All right. And what might be responsible for this, shift in dynamics?
A lot more people are going online. In the Gambia, if you look at it overall, a lot more people are online.
Okay.
So instead of buying a newspaper for $20 or $15, I'd rather just have my internet and check the website of the internet. I mean of the newspaper, or go on Facebook, or check people's WhatsApp statuses, or go to WhatsApp groups and get updates on the news and so on and so on. So much more people are online, and it's easier to access information online than it is offline. And as a result, advertisers, they go to where the people are, and connected to that is also the money bit of it. A lot of online advertisements also generated based on clicks per second. So the more clicks they get on their websites, the more clicks they get, the more money they make. So as a result, it's a win-win situation. More people there, more money there. So therefore, that's why we see more.
Quite interesting.
Absolutely. And then, Mr. Kanda, we've seen quite a lot of money injected or spent on advertisement. If you look at the U.S. elections, you would see a good chunk of money has been spent on advertisement. But here in the Gambia, it appears it's pretty new, because you see people making a lot of noise when television or radio stations, social media play adverts. But in the context of this, we want you to bring us up to date what entails airing these adverts on social media, on television, as enshrined in the ethics of journalism.
That's a very, very important question. And it's important to note the distinction between what obtains in mainstream media and in social media. In mainstream media, on GRTs and other standard media platforms, there are ethics, there are guidelines, and a lot of people endeavor to meet those ethics and those standards. And sometimes mistakes happen, and these are genuine mistakes. They happen, and when those happen, actually, you make efforts to correct them. But on social media, unfortunately, a lot of the errors happen, and sometimes there's a deliberate attempt not to even ignore standards of fundamental ethical principles in mainstream journalism. So as a result, what you see is a lot of distortion, a lot of propaganda, a lot of misinformation, which we'll talk about hopefully in a bit. But generally, this happens a lot on social media, much more compared to what obtains in the mainstream media.
And some people see these ads as good moves in terms of convincing the electorate to vote for them. But some see them as problematic as well, because they perceive social media as a breeding ground for misinformation. How then do we strike a balance in ensuring that social media is not a tool that has been used to amplify misinformation?
That's a very, very difficult question. For a lot of politicians, they look at the short-term gain. I know I post a very convincing video online. Even if it is not true, I'll get the clicks, I'll get the views, and I will go viral, and people will eventually probably vote me, and so on and so forth. So that's the short-term gain. But eventually, this leads to apathy, because then people get disappointed, because this is not real. You understand? When things go viral, they think the change is going to happen as quickly as the content goes viral. It's not realistic, and as a result, this leads to a situation where people lose hope, people fed up, and as a result, apathy sinks in, and when reality hits, a lot of the time, then you see a lot of young people, particularly, losing hope And as a result, the long-term effect is that it's going to lead to a situation where we have lesser and lesser participation in terms of politics, a lot of cynicism, political cynicism. People were like, this politics, there's nothing we can do. We are not going to have any change, so I would rather not participate. In terms of striking a balance, it's a very difficult question, but increasingly what in many parts of the world is happening is that people look at the context in terms of to what extent do we push the boundaries of freedom of expression, but at the same time also how do we ensure that people are aware, people are informed, there is enough awareness in terms of media and information literacy, because sometimes people confuse things because they are not very well informed. So, but if they are very well informed, sometimes some of these things you can overlook in terms of regulation. But it's a very difficult question to answer.
Very well, Demba Kande is our guest tonight on the election. What we are looking at, the role of advertisement as well as the use of social media in elections and countering misinformation during polls. We should be taking a very short break here on election. Here on Election Watch with me, Essa Sow and Fatoumata Sise. When we return, the program will continue. We will dive into the fight against misinformation in elections very shortly. Welcome back to Election Watch here on GRTS with me, Essa Sow and Fatoumata Sise. We are looking at the role of advertisement and the use of social media in elections, and as well countering disinformation. Our guest is Mr. Demba Kande, a social media expert as well as a lecturer at the University of the Gambia, the School of Journalism and Digital Media. Now, Mr. Kande, we have spoken about the paradigm shift or a shift in dynamics from using the mainstream media, the radio, the television, and the newspapers into the use of, social media. Can the use of social media sway the opinion of the electorate?
Yes, it does. In fact, there are a lot of studies have shown that, especially young people, social media has that power to sway public opinion. And we've seen, even in the Gambia, our studies have shown that a lot of public issues, contentious public issues, are sometimes driven by conversation on social media.
And what sort of impact can this have? Can it be positive or negative?
It can be both, depending on how it's used. So social media generally reflects, in most cases, the attitudes, behaviors, and approach of the people in the real world. So what happens is sometimes, depending on how people use social media platform, and especially in terms of contentious issues, sometimes very often it's when things get really emotional, because that's the kind of content that goes viral, and it is the viral content that really has the potential to change public opinion.
All right, so before we move to countering this information, what sort of weight does social media carry in terms of swaying opinions in elections?
That's a very difficult question to answer because the data is not very available, and but generally the notion is that to the extent that social media can sway public opinion ordinarily, it also has the potential to sway votes in one way or the other. But that requires a lot of strategy, that requires a lot of communication and over time in order to realize those changes.
All right, over now to disinformation. But before we look at disinformation in its entirety, we want to differentiate these two, because most of the time people are talking about misinformation, disinformation, false news. Help us distinguish the history.
That's a good, important question. Disinformation is misleading or false information that is published with a special agenda.
Okay.
That's disinformation. If you do it deliberately and with a specific agenda in mind, so I want to go around and tell lies about Fatumata, about Esa, to the extent that I will damage their reputation and get something favorable in my tone, that is disinformation. Misinformation is where I share information that is wrong unknowingly. That's misinformation. So false information is false news is any news that is not true, that does not reflect the facts on the ground. So the sharing of that particular false news deliberately with previous knowledge that this is false, that's disinformation. It's similar to propaganda in that you have an ulterior motive and you are doing that to damage somebody's reputation or to sell a particular product or so.
Okay, so let's look at disinformation precisely. How rampant is it, especially during this election time?
We're doing a study on this, so we're still looking at a lot of data, but from what we've seen, there's a lot of disinformation. There's a little bit of also what could be described as dangerous speech and hate speech as well. The disinformation is mostly targeted at unscrupulous social media users, people who don't look critically. So they will pass information that looks like it's true, but it's not necessary. So if you scratch the surface, then you know that this is fake news. But naturally, some of the party agents, they push this kind of narrative, this kind of agenda, this kind of information because they know deep down that this kind of content or this kind of information favors their candidate over their opponent.
All right. And then some people are not mentally inclined when it comes to social media, and in fact, disinformation. How do they detect this? How could one go around in detecting what disinformation is all about on social media?
It's a difficult one, but generally the platforms try to warn the users. So sometimes because there are characteristics, and some of these platforms are also actively helping in terms of fighting against disinformation or misinformation. So when there's suspicious content, they warn you first. For instance, on Twitter or on Facebook, before you share a content, if you just see a content, especially with a link, you want to share it, they'll warn you first. You want to read this first before you share. So that's one measure. The other measure is sometimes, as the user, we advise people to look at content very closely. So just don't have a quick look, or just don't receive a message and start forwarding it. And
especially on WhatsApp, there you have a lot of forwarded messages.
Exactly. So it happens a lot. And what WhatsApp is doing, especially in around elections, what they do is, if a message is forwarded several times, then they start to limit how much you can forward that message. So you can. So initially, at the beginning, you can say a WhatsApp message is unlimited. They came to the level that you can say it only maybe about 10, 15. So now, maximum of 5 at a time. But if a message is shared several times already, when WhatsApp labels this is shared so many times, it will tell you you cannot share this more than one person at a time.
And we have also observed, especially during the previous US elections, when information regarding the election is shared by individuals, by journalists, by media house, it is normally flagged by, these corporate bodies. Twitter, Facebook, and even Instagram. They will flag it to indicate that, you need to be careful with this information, though you can say it. I think that's a very important aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. They do that to sort of help the ordinary person to understand the context. So sometimes some information you're sharing, as journalists, as professional journalists, we do that. When we share news that we have not confirmed, we tell the public that, okay, this is news, but we have not confirmed this yet. This is just information we've received, we are yet to confirm. But ordinarily for social media users, generally, when they share this kind of thing, they don't put those kind of disclaimers. So that's in part as part of their efforts to ensure election integrity. Most of these platforms are required to label that kind of content, that this content is unverified.
Oh, all right. Demba Kandi right there, social media expert, as well as a lecturer at the University of the Gambia. This is Election Watch with me, Esaso and Fatoumata Sise. We'll be taking a very short break. When we return, we'll look at what's happening on social media. The electorate has been reacting to the campaign. People are talking, Fatmata.
Absolutely. When we come back, we'll hear from Aminata Isanyang. She's all set to bring us up to date. And we also have a press release from the Independent Electoral Commission.
Yeah, very well.
Absolutely. We know Dr. Ismaila Cisse and Mai Ahmad Fati have been to the courts and they've won their case. But we want to also get the facts out of that, especially at this time when we don't know much about the outcomes of the court. But like you said, we'll go for a quick break. When we come back, Election Watch continues right here on GRTS. Still stay tuned. Election Watch, it's coming to you live from GRTS here with me, Fatoumata Sise and Esa So. Our topic of discussion tonight is role of social media and advertisements in elections and countering disinformation. Our special guest is Demba Kende, he's a communications expert. But before we go back to Mr. Kende, we are shifting our attention to our social media watch colleague, and that's Aminata Isanyang. She's been keeping a close eye on what Gambians within and outside the country is saying about these elections, especially the recent happenings dominating the headlines. Aminata is here with us in the studio. Good evening, Aminata. Warm welcome to Election Watch.
Good evening, Fatima. Thank you.
What do you have for us?
Very well, Fatima. The conversations continue to unfold online. And what's more interesting is everyday new topics emerge online. But we are going to look at today few tweets reacting to CA's and GMC's victory against the IEC. And people have been reacting. We have this tweet here by Mohammed Lamin Sise. He said, proud of this generation for being bold, for challenging unconstitutional laws. We are paving a whole new path for our democracy. We must protect this without firmness, commitment, and for next generation. We have that tweet right there on the screen, and Madi Jabate also tweeted saying, the court's ruling for CA to take part in the election is a plus for our democracy. It establishes that no one is above scrutiny, hence IEC has been made to realize that they are accountable. It also shows the critical role and position the courts have in building our democracy. There was a tweet by Madi Jabate, and Dr. Ismaila Cisse himself tweeted saying, we express sincere gratitude to everyone that contributed towards CA landmark victory against the Independent Electoral Commission. We thank our team of lawyers under the leadership leadership of CE Mene for accepting and convincingly presenting the case before the High Court. That was a tweet by Dr. Ismaila Cissé, the presidential candidate, I would say, for CA. And Bankaman also tweeted, he reacted on the GMC's victory against the IEC. He said, congratulations to GMC leader and GMC party for winning their case against the IEC. Our judicial system is working on providing relief where the Constitution provides it. The Gambia is truly coming of age. And Salutal also gave his legal perspective. He said, why are you scared? IEC took a position which they believe was in line with the law, and the court held otherwise. The great thing is the court is the final arbiter. Gambia elections will be more prudent in making decisions given that the courts have the power to review the same. And then away from the actions of CA and GMC's court case, Giver actually tweeted saying, stop criticizing your opponent and talk to us about your policies. That's the shortest tweet that we're featuring today, but very powerful. And we have Omar Cisse, who also tweeted saying, as you vote on 4th December 2021, remember to vote and celebrate in peace. We stand to gain nothing if we let our differences bring us down to our knees. Today, I challenge you to choose support and promote peace. Do it for our children. Okay. And we're going to wrap it here. Okay. Actually, Marabi normally gives us a statistic. Okay. He said in the past 7 days, there were 131 tweets on Twitter with the hashtag Gambia Votes. 77.1% of the tweets were from men, whilst women tweeted 22.9% of it. And the most influential tweeters of this hashtag were Gambia NYP and Yappies Gambia. And then here's the hashtag Election Watch. But we will continue to monitor social media and the conversations, but they can use the hashtag Election Watch or tag Jatis TV Official.
Right. Aminata is signing with the social media watch. We want to thank you so very much. Gambians are talking, and they're talking about the December 4th polls. And Fatma is talking about the reactions we've gotten with regards to the ruling of CA and GMC versus the IEC. We have seen the IEC have released a statement, respecting the outcome of the case, but also signaling to take a next move.
And in fact, the press release is here. It is clearly stated from the IEC that the Independent Electoral Commission brings to the attention of the general public that following the filing of petitions at the High Court by Ismaila Cisse of Citizens Alliance and Mai Ahmed Fati of Gambia Moral Congress, the court delivered ruling with respect to the said petitions on the 23rd and 24th of November 2021. And while the IEC respects the decision of the court, it will exercise its constitutional right of appeal at the Court of Appeal of the Gambia. And the Commission remains committed to conducting free, fair, credible elections and would continue with its preparations to successfully conduct the presidential election on the 4th of December 2021. And they are asking for the usual cooperation of all parties, candidates, stakeholders, and the general public that it is solicited. And Mr. Kande, we are just shifting away a little bit from the disinformation social media, but this is what is dominating the headlines now, and then people are hailing the democracy of this country, especially the independence of the courts. But then one thing that has been also dominating the discussions is that, yes, it's one thing that CA and the GMC won the case, but it's another thing whether the IEC still has a ground to say they failed to file in certain pertinent documents that they have been asking for. So these are two contentious issues that people are discussing currently.
Yeah, it looks very interesting. And at the end of the day, what's really interesting is that as a country and as a people, we're talking about issues. We're not fighting over them, and we're using, judicial institutions, established legitimate institutions to solve our problems. And it's interesting to see how this is going to end. It's interesting to see that the IEC is going to appeal.
Yeah, to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah, so that's what democracies do. That's what maturity is in a democracy. And so it's interesting.
And then it's quite important also, this social media reveal a lot of things. People are now trying to shift away from the traditional way of politics. That's politics of attacks, politics of insults. And now they're inserting pressure on this advise political party leaders and then, militants to stick to policies and to desist from personal attacks?
I think that's really, really important. Those are positive sentiments that come out of social media. In general, in many societies, you see that a lot of these problems happen in silos. So you're only within your small user group, and as a result, you discuss things and you think the world evolves or revolves around that. But on social media, it's open space, and a lot of the sentiments that we see on social media, it's really positive regarding the election, and that's really, really great. If we're able to continue to move that kind of sentiment further into the election, especially in the next few days or so until December 4th, then we'll have a very credible election.
Yes, sir.
All right, yes. So the use of social media and advertisement is becoming more prevalent, especially in this country. And we have spoken about how there is so much disinformation, there is so much misinformation. And now the electorate is presented with a voluminous amount of information on social media, especially with regards to the elections. So what sort of information should the electorate be looking out for as far as what we see on social media and advertisement regarding elections is concerned?
That's a good question. So on social media or on mainstream media, on mainstream media, I mean, the institutions or the media outlets are very credible. If you go on social media, what I would advise is look out for credible users, because whether they are certified or not, but we know Gambia is a very small space.
Very well.
We all know each other. We know if Fatimata is posting, we know that Fatimata will always post something that she can verify. She's not going to post fake news or fake information and so on and so forth. That's one thing. So go after or check information on, credible sources, credible users, and use that kind of information. The second bit is that there are a lot of platforms that have come, especially during this election, to fact check a lot of issues. I don't want to mention specific platforms, but a lot of platforms are doing really well in terms of trying to go after content that is misinformation or that's disinformation that is meant to deceive the general population. And they're correcting this information and they're also sharing it on various platforms, on social media and on mainstream media. So I'll advise that people take advantage of this, follow mainstream media, credible mainstream media outlets, and then go on social media and look for credible users and follow them for up-to-date.
Okay, talking of fact-checking some of the information that we have online, I mean, how should the electorate go about doing this?
We have a lot of ways of doing this. One is, once you get information that you think is suspicious, you can flag it and send it to trusted partners. There's what we call FactSpace West Africa. Is doing a lot of fact checking, and they have a website, they have social media platform. They also have a WhatsApp number that you can send suspicious claims to. Once you send those information, then they will check and verify and let you know. There are also civil society organizations that are engaged on providing information to the populace in terms of fact-checking various claims within the social media space in the Gambia.
All right, Demba Kandide.
All right.
Fatmata?
So, in fact, I'm going back to the disinformation part, because we've talked about how messages could go viral, especially misleading information on WhatsApp platforms, on Facebook, you screenshot, and before you know it, it's everywhere. And when it drops into the WhatsApp groups, before you control the damage, it's already out there, and then it's very difficult to make some people believe. In fact, even when that is fact-checked to say this is false, it is very difficult to make some people believe. How detrimental is this, especially during this election period?
This is very, very serious. In most cases, in fact, even if fact-checking is very effective, to a large extent, the original message goes much, much further than whatever fact check that you're able to make later on. So that is why, especially those who are sharing information on WhatsApp groups, on social media, I mean, Twitter, Facebook, and all other platforms, it's very, very essential that we all fact check ourselves. We fact check the information that we're sharing, make sure it's the correct information before we share it, especially if this is contentious, controversial information, because at the end of the day, with just one click, you can make a serious damage to the entire election process, and that would be on you as an individual. And we as a people, as a country, we have a responsibility to make sure that together we build a better Gambia. I mean, we've come a long way as a country. So it's a collective responsibility to make it better.
And we also want to understand how this information could fuel hate or dangerous speech.
That's really, really important, because if you look at it during elections, particularly in political rallies, sometimes the mood is such that some people, they're overly excited and they say things that ordinarily they wouldn't say.
Right.
And as such, we should also be very, very careful. We should remember the fact that after all, we are all Gambians. After all, this is our home. Whether we are in different camps, we belong to different political parties, different views. At the end of the day, what is important is that we all have a greater role in developing this country. So no messages that were divisive, no messages that will put this country in kind of disarray and so on and so forth. So the hate speeches, the dangerous speech alerts, there are a lot of fact checkers that are also looking into this. Would be important that politicians particularly, and political leaders, and those who use political platforms to exercise some form of restraint in terms of the...
Yeah, in fact, I was coming to that, because you look at the use of social media, it has become an integral part of information sharing during elections, and the politicians themselves are using social media platforms to send out messages. And we know social media is one tool that you can use for mobilization. So what role should these politicians play in ensuring that messages they share on social media are not inimical to the country's peace and stability?
There should be a deliberate effort from all political parties, all political leaders, to use their social media platforms to engender political participation, positive messaging, and interaction, especially among young people, because a lot of us are only on social media.
Yeah.
We don't listen to radio, we don't watch television, we are only on Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, or TikTok. So use those platforms to reach these people, but also with a very positive attitude in terms of engagement, because ultimately, it's message that is sentimental, and positive sentiments too sell, but sometimes there is that tendency to say things that are not in line, things that are very inimical to peace and stability, and as such, because they go viral very easily, just for that purpose. But as responsible citizens and as party leaders particularly, or people that have platforms, people that speak to people who listen, it's really important that we use our platform, use our influences for something greater than ourselves and our parties.
All right, so you look at the way and manner in which information is shared on social media and how fast it moves. We have observed that in most times, misinformation spreads faster than accurate information. What is responsible for this?
So this is mainly two reasons. One is because a lot of the misinformation is such that ordinarily you would say this is too good to be true.
It's appealing.
It's very appealing. So as a result, you see it, you want to publish that. So the second bit is also now the desire to be the first to publish. So a lot of people want to be the first.
The breaking news aspect.
I want to be like, in the family group, I want to be the first to share it, I want to be the first to share it on my Twitter, and so on. And so this really has the danger to it, that because at the end of the day, you share something that you can't verify, you haven't verified yet. And as such, it goes viral very easily.
And then social media, precisely, many people believe it makes elections messy. And do we know some of the strategies that could be adopted to ensure that people accept information as they are, especially perceive them as factual, irrespective of what is being shared compared to what people are saying about the social media?
Yeah. There is one that's really proactive disclosure. So you have information, you make sure the critical stakeholders, the political parties, the electoral management body, the IEC in the case of the Gambia, the security forces, and civil society, the media, we proactively ensure that there's always information and available up to date, especially using these various platforms. So we don't also, it's not enough to say, okay, I'm GRT, so I'm only going to sit back on TV only or on radio only and publish. But GRT is doing great. You have your Twitter, you have your Facebook. A lot of people are on only those platforms. So inform them, update them as you get the information. So don't just wait, okay, it's 8 o'clock, we're going to only air the news at 8 o'clock. A lot of people will be on 8 o'clock news, but a lot of people are also going to be only on Facebook and Twitter and so on and so on. So proactively share information and on time. Otherwise, if you don't, somebody is going to share it and they're probably going to share the wrong information.
And in as much as we talk about this information, fact-checking also is another part that complements it to counter whatsoever is going viral that is not true. In fact, we've seen that happening in the Gambia, we've been discussing it, but we want to know how effective this has been in the country.
That's just a very, very important question. A lot of people are trying to fact check, but like I said, fact check is like firefighting.
Okay.
You know, it's always not the most effective in some cases, and in most cases, actually, the original message, the damage would have already been done, and the corrections or the fact checks would not reach the same number of people that the original message has reached. So it's always important, therefore, to rather have proactive information sharing as quickly as possible.
All right. And then quickly, when we look at the literacy level in the Gambia compared to the literate level, it is quite imbalanced. The illiteracy level is very high, and as a result, when some of these messages go out there, especially in WhatsApp groups, it goes like wildfire. Do we know the reason behind this? Do they tend to believe more in these messages they receive on WhatsApp compared to what is being broadcast on traditional media?
Yes, because for most people, the WhatsApp platform that this message will reach them through is their family group, just like their family bantaba, is their household. So if message comes to you through your family, chances are that you tend to believe that message much more than if it comes from, quote-unquote, a foreign source, say radio, television, and so on and so forth. Our studies have shown that a lot of people really rely on this kind of platform for a lot of information, and they trust the information that is coming out of those platforms.
Without even verifying.
Without even verification. So that's why also, even in the fact-check efforts that are being done, I have seen some innovations in that. So instead of just publishing fact-checks on radio, on websites and newspapers, they're also recording them in the local languages and sharing them on WhatsApp groups.
And sometimes you wonder where they get this information that they will record and share on social media, especially on WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, the sources.
It's from the political propagandists, from political operatives. Most of these people, their intention is, get as much votes as possible, so it doesn't matter. The end justifies the means, unfortunately.
All right, so we've also observed that, Fatma have spoken about the imbalance in terms of the level of literacy in this country. And a lot of people have access to the internet and they use these social media applications. But you have a significant chunk of the electorate that do not use social media. So talking of this, what should the politicians focus more on? Is it social media or the mainstream media?
I would say both, because a lot of the constituents, there are specific constituents that are only on social media.
Yeah.
There are other constituents that are not at all in any social media platform.
Okay.
So if you really want to attain hit all of these constituents, so you should build synergy. Therefore, spend some time on social media, spend some time on mainstream media, and do some face-to-face, sort of a combination, so that you build synergy essentially. And in some cases, even if you have one person or the same constituents on different platforms, they identify more with a particular platform over the other. And in most cases, some platforms are more effective than others in terms of communication. And also when it comes to convincing people. A lot of people don't have the time to read long essays on Facebook. They don't have time to read long, write-ups on newspapers. So they would rather listen.
All right. So very briefly, as we zero in on December the 4th, we have seen Gambians are using social media a lot. Generally, how will you assess, the use of advertisement and social media in this electoral process?
It looks very, very interesting. We will be doing a lot of analysis after the election. Then I'll be able to tell you a lot more details about what happened and so on and so on. But for now, it looks like a very different platform. It looks like a different landscape as it used to be. And so thanks to the opening of this space, generally in terms of freedom of expression, but also in terms of freedom of the media. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Kande, we'll leave it there. We are completely running out of time. We appreciate your time on this election watch. Many thanks for coming to join us to continue this important discussion.
It's a pleasure.
That's communications expert there, Esa, Mr. Demba Kande, and he is also a lecturer at the School of Journalism of the University of the Gambia. And we will be back on Tuesday to look at more interesting segments here on Election Watch. But until then, it's been me, Fatmata Sise, and Esa. So we'll be back next Tuesday with a brand new edition of Election Watch. Until then, it's bye from us. Enjoy the rest of our programs. News at 10 is up next with Fatmata Cham. So stay tuned.